Hello everybody and welcome back to another CB Showtunes tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about the game design document. Now the reality is that inside of our modern day world where we're trying to push ahead and create all these fantastic games in a very short amount of time, we don't really focus on how to make a game good, right? We typically just rush to get a prototype done, and then once the prototype's done, we're just like, okay, I'm done, and then you move on with your life, right? And you really never focus on improving the game at the end. And that's the reason why we have so many trash games that are coming out today, is because they're not really fully flushed out, they're not really thought out, it's just built, which is a problem. So I decided that we're going to start here because, just as much as, how long it's taken for me to get back into creating videos, it's the same principle with that. We got to start back over at the beginning so we understand truly what we are working with and working towards, right? So the GDD, or game design document. How do you design one of these things? I know there's like a ton of videos out there where they all talk about like different ways to be able to build a game design document, right? I mean, how do you make a game design document? It's super easy, right? You got like your title, then you got your company, you got to talk about marketing, all that. Trust me, there's a lot that goes into making a game design document, and you probably don't want to have to deal with that on your first game, or essentially your first prototype. At this stage, you should be building your prototype if you're watching this video currently. And there's many different types of GDDs if you think about it, right? So you have a GDD, which holds all your information about your video game, right? Which would be talking about like the actual game, about the marketing campaign, etc., right? And that document comes a little bit later, in my opinion. You see, whenever you design your prototype, you should only have like a one-page GDD, which is what we're going to cover today. This GDD essentially gives you your vertical slice for your game and sort of provides that information, or that base information, so it inspires you and gets you on the right track, okay? Later on, that's when you would actually start building the full-fledged GDD, which that could take like a month, 2 months to really flush out, but we're not going to cover that. Okay, we're going to cover just the one-page document, and there's many different ways you could do this document as well, but this is the way I do it, all right? So just take it with a grain of salt. Now, the first thing that we're going to cover is, of course, the title. Now, the title is not extremely important right now. This is going to be the prototype stage of your game, which means that you could just start this off with, okay, so this is just a project, right? So we're going to call it Project Alpha, which, is fine. You could give it a sample title. You could be like, okay, so this is just going to be a reference title for the next coming title, right, before we can work on it. Or this is going to be the title of the game. There's so many different things you can do here. So for me, I'm just going to call this game Piggy Breakout, right? Now, like I said, the title is not extremely important. We can always change it later, but this is just something that we can do. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the company. Now, the company is sort of like the ownership for this product. So if you are not part of a company, then you could just put your name there. You could put the potential company that you're going to establish. If you're planning on opening up an LLC, which is typically what most indie developers are going to do, then you could put that inside there as well. But if you don't have anything like that, just put in your name and that's be fine. For me, I'm just going to put in my YouTube channel's name, so we're going to call it CB Showtunes, right? So now we have established the ownership of this project, okay? The next thing that we're going to plug in is, of course, our summary. Now, our summary is essentially going to describe what the game is going to be about, right? And I already pre-prepared this because reasons. Let's put it that way. But yes, it should tell you exactly how your game is going to play and feel and get people inspired before they even see your product, okay? So if we take a look at the summary I prepared here, we say it's a 3D platformer where you are a piggy bank whose only dream is to survive as the sirens of an ice cream truck can be heard in the neighborhood. Okay, so we've established that this game is going to be a 3D platformer. So we now understand the type of gameplay that we're going to be doing. Then we take a look at the rest, where the piggy bank is trying to survive. So we can see that, okay, so if it's a platformer, there's probably going to be collections inside there, but it could be a speedrun thing too. But now since we look at it as it's a piggy bank, well, obviously you're probably going to be picking up some coins along the way. But you also see the story, so you could say, okay, so we're inside of a neighborhood. There's going to be kids, right? There's going to be like the sort of environment that you're going to be in. So you're going to have like a house, and maybe there's going to be like a nursery, or maybe there's going to be a kitchen, right? So you can begin to pick apart these different levels and say, okay, so this might actually be really interesting. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is the game pillars. The game pillars essentially tell you what is going to make or break your game. These are the things that are going to hold your game up and make it extremely good. All right, so if your game pillars suck, your game's going to suck. But if your game pillars are good and they're done right and they're done well, then your game is going to be amazing. All right. Now, there's no guarantee that your game is going to sell because it's amazing, but you know that it is going to be a good game at the end is what it is. All right, so I had to preface that, but anyway. All right, so now we have our game pillar panel. I like to put these inside of a list, so it's like you could be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever. I use stars, and typically you're going to need at least 3 different pillars, at least. I mean, sometimes you can go with 2, but just like a house of cards, the more pillars that you have to support it, the better it is. But you don't want to have too many supports because then it's spread out too wide, essentially. So let's talk about the types of pillars that this game is going to need. So we're going to need extremely good locomotion. Now, locomotion is essentially the movement of your character. Now, I know this sounds pretty crazy. You're like, well, obviously the player needs to be a very important or integral part of the game, right? But when it comes down to this specific movement, you have to really understand why the locomotion is so important inside of this type of game. There really is no combat, and if there is combat, it's very limited, right? And then you have to think, okay, well, how does the movement feel, right? So if it feels clunky, if it feels floaty, then, the game's going to suck, right? So you don't want to make it that way. So that's the reason why I put this as one of my pillars here, because I feel like that would probably make the best or the most out of the game itself, all right? We want to talk about progression. Now, progression is something that I think is very important because for you to be able to want to come back and play the game over and over and over again, you need to feel a sense of accomplishment. If there's no sense of accomplishment, you're probably not going to play the game again. You're going to pick it up, you're going to drop it off and be like, whatever, right? So I feel like this is going to be a very important part of the game. And we have to really focus on what are the progressive steps inside of here. Now, I know that when we talk about the different types of mechanics and all, that's something that this would be inside of as well. But as I said, I think that this is a very integral part here. The next thing that we're going to talk about is design or level design. Now, just like if you think about the older Call of Duty games, the level designs were absolutely insane. They were built very well. But you take a look at the newer ones, and they're so messy, essentially, right? They don't really have as much cohesion when it comes down to the design, and it just feels like it's either too wide, too open, or just not enough, or there's too much going on, essentially, right? So simple, but also setting it up to where your character can get to places that I guess allows exploration is something that's very important, okay? So yes, we have these 3 different points, and we can break these down even more. So we could say, all right, so what sort of locomotion are we talking about? And this is when we get into the mechanics. So I'm going to actually put game pillars and important mechanics, if you will. This way, we don't need to we don't need to apply another box here. Now, you could add another box that's just like mechanics to be able to just define them a little bit better, but I think putting them right here is fine as well. Like I said, we're keeping it on one page, so we're keeping it very, very simple. And as you can see, I'm not even taking up majority of the page. This is just the top of the page, right? So we talk about locomotion. So what sort of locomotion can we have inside of this game? Obviously, we're going to need moving, and that's going to be was there WASD, right? We talk about jumping. And now we say, okay, so what sort of jumping do we want? Do we want like a double jump, triple jump, right? And I think that a double jump would be fine. So we say, okay, we'll have a jump and then double jump. Then we say, okay, well, what other sort of mechanics can we have in it? Well, what about wall jumping? In fact, actually, we can add that inside of here. So we'll just do double and then wall as well, just like so. Then we say, all right, well, what sort of other mechanics can we add? Okay, well, what about a dash, right? These are just basic things that you could say, all right, I think that this would be really cool to add. Does it break the game? Does it not break the game? Etc., right? So we'll make the dash, which is like a left shift, something like that. So very basic mechanics. I think that we can actually implement those things pretty easily. So we'll use those for now. All right, what about progression, right? So how are we going to make the character progress? So we'll probably do locking off rooms until all collectibles have been met, right? So until all collectibles. Actually, you know what? Let's just say they have to reach a certain point, right? So then they have the option to pick up all the collectibles or not. And then we can rate them off of that. So we could say rate the player based on the score they obtain in the level. All right. We're going to have whenever they get to a certain destination. So we got that right there. Let's say collectibles and achievements. All right. So something that almost every game today has and is absolutely necessary in my opinion, especially if you're selling your game on Steam. Achievements are going to be something that you're going to need. Okay. And I think that we'll call it unlocking skills is another one. And I spelled achievements wrong. Okay, there we go. So I think that these three should be fine for this. And then, of course, we have level design. So what about the level design is very important inside of this aspect, right? So we need a cohesive environment. And this is also more on the art side, if you think about it. We need to be able to have... I think that it needs to be difficult with puzzles, but not too difficult. So we're going to say puzzles, and let's see, what else should we do here? Puzzles and obstacles. Let's do that. I think that should be fine. So we'll start off the basic level without any of those things, and then we'll slowly progress to new types of difficulty, right? So we can also add that inside of here. Difficulty per level increases, like so. Okay, so this is just a very simple document, as you can see, but it gives us a full fleshed out ideal as to what we're going to be going for when we design the game, okay? Now, inside of our next video, which I believe we'll be posting next week, we're going to actually get into the process of building this game. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed. I know, like I said, it's a little bit of a different video, but once we get into Unity, we're going to be getting back to the same old format where we're going to get things knocked out, get these mechanics done, and yeah, make sure to leave those comments down below. Super excited to hear from you guys as well. So yeah, I'll see y'all later. Bye.